Have you ever felt exhausted not because life is hard, but because people are hard? Have you ever replayed a conversation in your mind again and again, wondering why someone didn't understand you, didn't support you, didn't show up the way you expected? Have you ever felt frustrated, hurt, or even angry because someone else didn't act the way you wanted them to? If that sounds familiar, then stay with me, because this one idea, just two simple words, might completely change how you experience your relationships, your work, your confidence, and your peace of mind. Those two words are, let them. Most people spend their entire lives trying to control outcomes they cannot control. They try to control how others think, how others feel, how others behave. They try to manage perceptions, avoid judgment, chase approval, and force alignment. And without realizing it, they slowly give away their power, their energy, and their happiness. This book exists because of that pain. Mel Robbins didn't wake up one morning feeling calm, confident, and emotionally free. In fact, she spent years feeling overwhelmed, anxious, and stuck, even while appearing successful on the outside. She had the career, the platform, the recognition, yet internally she was drained by expectations, disappointment, and emotional overload. And one day, in the middle of a very ordinary situation, she had a realization that stopped her cold. She realized that most of her suffering wasn't caused by what people were doing. It was caused by her resistance to it. That's where the Let Them theory was born. Mel Robbins is a former criminal defense attorney, a globally respected motivational speaker, and one of the most influential voices in personal development today. Her ideas are rooted in psychology, neuroscience, and real-world experience, not motivational fantasy. She doesn't talk down to you. She talks to you like a friend who has lived through the chaos and finally found clarity. And the clarity is this: you cannot control other people, but you can control how much power you give them. The Let Them theory is not about being passive. It's not about giving up. It's not about being weak or indifferent. It's about emotional freedom. It's about recognizing that when people show you who they are, when situations unfold in ways you don't like, when plans fall apart, when expectations are not met, instead of fighting reality, you say two words that save your energy. Let them. Let them be upset. Let them misunderstand you. Let them leave. Let them judge. Let them fail to show up. Because the moment you stop trying to control what you can't control, something extraordinary happens. You get your life back. Think about how much time people spend explaining themselves, justifying themselves, overthinking messages, replaying arguments, imagining what they should have said, worrying about what others think. That mental noise is exhausting. And Mel Robbins asks a simple but uncomfortable question. What if none of that is necessary? What if peace comes not from fixing people, but from releasing them? Most of us were never taught emotional boundaries. We were taught to be polite, to be agreeable, to be liked. We were taught that if someone is unhappy, it's our responsibility to fix it. If someone is disappointed, it must be our fault. If someone pulls away, we must chase. But that belief system quietly destroys self-respect. The Let Them theory flips that script. When someone doesn't invite you, let them. When someone doesn't reply, let them. When someone doesn't support your growth, let them. Because their behavior is information. And information is power, if you're brave enough to accept it. One of the hardest truths in life is this: people will do what they want to do. No amount of explaining, begging, performing, or sacrificing will change that. And that truth hurts, until you realize how freeing it is. Because once you stop trying to control others, you finally have energy to control what actually matters. Your choices, your reactions, your direction. Mel Robbins explains that resistance is the real enemy. The stress you feel isn't caused by events. It's caused by your refusal to accept reality as it is. When you argue with reality, reality always wins. Let them is not approval. Let them is acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean you stay. It means you stop fighting what already is. Think about a relationship where you're constantly trying to prove your worth, trying to be understood, trying to be chosen. If someone truly values you, you don't have to convince them. And if they don't, let them. That doesn't make you unworthy. It makes you free. This theory works because it aligns with how the human brain actually functions. The brain is wired to conserve energy and avoid pain. When you obsess over someone else's behavior, your nervous system stays in a constant state of alert. You become emotionally reactive, anxious, and exhausted. Let them shuts down that loop. It signals safety to your brain. It tells your nervous system, I'm not in danger. I don't need to fix this. And that's where calm begins. Mel Robbins emphasizes that emotional maturity is not about controlling emotions. It's about choosing where you invest them. Every time you chase validation, you're handing over your power. Every time you allow someone else's mood to dictate yours, you're outsourcing your peace. Let them brings the power back. Imagine you're at work and someone doesn't appreciate your effort. You would replay it all day, questioning yourself, feeling resentful. Let them says, I did my best. Their reaction is theirs. And suddenly, the weight lifts. Imagine a friend who pulls away when you need them most. You would chase, explain, feel rejected. Let them says, this tells me who they are right now. And clarity replaces confusion. This is why the theory feels so radical, because it removes illusion. It removes the illusion that you can manage other people's emotions. It removes the illusion that approval equals safety. It removes the illusion that being liked is more important than being at peace. And once those illusions fall, you stop shrinking. You stop performing. You stop overgiving. You stop abandoning yourself. And that's when your real life begins. Most people don't realize how often they betray themselves just to keep others comfortable. They say yes when they mean no. They stay quiet when they should speak. They stay when they should leave. Let them is permission to stop doing that. Permission to choose yourself without guilt. Mel Robbins makes it clear. People who benefit from you having no boundaries will resist this idea. And that resistance is confirmation that you need it. When you stop chasing, what's meant for you moves toward you. When you stop forcing, alignment happens naturally. And this applies to everything: love, money, career, confidence, growth. The Let Them theory doesn't promise an easy life. It promises a lighter one. A life where you respond instead of react. A life where you observe instead of absorb. A life where you trust yourself instead of doubting your worth. And this is only the beginning. Because once you master letting others be who they are, the next step is even more powerful. You learn how to let yourself be who you are without apology. And that's where real transformation begins. When you truly begin to understand the Let Them theory, something subtle but powerful starts to shift inside you. You stop taking everything personally. You stop assuming that every reaction, every silence, every rejection is a reflection of your worth. And that shift alone can feel like finally being able to breathe after holding your breath for years. Most people walk through life with an invisible burden on their shoulders. The burden of expectation. They expect people to behave fairly. They expect effort to be reciprocated. They expect kindness to be remembered. They expect loyalty to be permanent. And when reality doesn't match those expectations, pain follows. Mel Robbins explains that expectations are the silent killers of peace. Not because having standards is wrong, but because attaching your emotional stability to someone else's behavior is dangerous. The moment your happiness depends on what another person does or doesn't do, you've given them control over your inner world. And most of the time, they don't even know they have it. Think about how often disappointment comes from one simple sentence you never said out loud, but believed deeply inside. They should have. They should have called. They should have cared. They should have supported me. They should have known better. But should is not reality. Reality is what is happening, not what you hoped would happen. And the Let Them theory teaches you to stop arguing with reality. When someone shows you their priorities, let them. When someone chooses differently than you would, let them. When someone cannot meet you where you are, let them. This is not emotional coldness. This is emotional intelligence. Because once you stop demanding that people be who they are not, you can finally see them clearly. And clarity is kindness to yourself. Mel Robbins shares that one of the most painful cycles people get stuck in is the need for closure. People want explanations. They want apologies. They want acknowledgement. They believe that if the other person would just say the right thing, then they could move on. But closure doesn't come from other people. Closure comes from acceptance. When someone leaves without explanation, let them. When someone changes without warning, let them. When someone fails to take responsibility, let them. Waiting for them to change keeps you emotionally tied to a version of the past that no longer exists. Letting them go releases you into the present. This theory becomes especially powerful when applied to relationships. Romantic relationships, friendships, family dynamics. These are the areas where people struggle the most because love makes us vulnerable. Love makes us hope, and hope makes us hold on longer than we should. Mel Robbins doesn't say people shouldn't care. She says people should care wisely. If you are constantly anxious in a relationship, constantly wondering where you stand, constantly adjusting yourself to avoid conflict, that is not connection. That is survival. And survival mode is exhausting. Let them reveal something uncomfortable but necessary. If someone wants to be in your life, you won't have to chase them. And if they don't, let them. This doesn't mean you don't grieve. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. It means you don't abandon yourself trying to keep someone else. There is a deep dignity in choosing not to chase what doesn't choose you. And once you experience that dignity, you don't forget it. Mel Robbins talks about people-pleasing as one of the biggest emotional traps humans fall into. People-pleasers believe their value comes from being needed, liked, or approved of. They say yes when they are overwhelmed. They suppress their feelings to avoid discomfort. They absorb other people's emotions as if they were responsible for them. But people-pleasing is not kindness. It is fear disguised as generosity. Fear of rejection. Fear of conflict. Fear of being seen as difficult. The let them theory gently but firmly breaks this pattern. When someone is disappointed by your boundary, let them. When someone is uncomfortable with your growth, let them. When someone reacts negatively to your honesty, let them. Their discomfort is not your emergency. And the moment you stop rescuing people from their emotions, you stop drowning in them yourself. This is where the psychological power of the theory becomes clear. Human beings are wired to seek belonging. Love does not require self-betrayal. You can care deeply and still protect your peace. You can be compassionate without being consumed. You can love people without letting them control you. When someone refuses to respect your boundaries, let them. But also let yourself step back. Because boundaries are not punishments. They are instructions for how to treat you. And those who respect you will listen. Those who don't, let them go. As you practice this theory, something unexpected happens. Your confidence grows, not because you become louder or tougher, but because you become anchored. You stop being pulled in 1,000 emotional directions. You stop outsourcing your worth. You begin to trust your inner voice again. And that trust changes everything. Because when you trust yourself, you stop needing external validation. You stop waiting for permission. You stop asking, is this okay? You already know. And this clarity doesn't make life perfect. It makes it honest. You see people as they are, not as you wish they were. You see situations clearly, without fantasy. You see yourself with compassion, not criticism. And that honesty is freedom. This is not the end of the journey. In fact, it's where the deeper work begins. Because once you stop trying to control others, you're faced with a powerful question. What will you do with all the energy you get back? That energy can be invested in growth, in purpose, in courage, in building a life that feels aligned instead of approved. And in the next part, Mel Robbins takes the let them theory beyond relationships, into success, habits, money, self-discipline, and emotional resilience. Because letting them is not just about others. It's about finally choosing yourself. When people finally stop fighting other people, something unexpected rises to the surface. Silence. Space. And in that space, you come face to face with yourself. This is where many people get uncomfortable because distraction disappears. That need is ancient. But in modern life, it often turns into emotional dependency. We confuse connection with compliance. We confuse love with self-sacrifice. Mel Robbins reminds us that healthy relationships do not require you to disappear. They allow you to exist fully. If being yourself causes someone to leave, let them. Because the alternative is shrinking, and shrinking is a slow form of self-abandonment. The let them theory also applies to criticism and judgment. One of the biggest reasons people don't pursue their dreams is fear of what others will say. Fear of being laughed at. Fear of being judged. Fear of being misunderstood. But judgment is unavoidable. So instead of trying to prevent it, Mel Robbins suggests something radical. Let them judge. Let them misunderstand you. Let them doubt you. Let them talk. Because their opinions do not build your life, your actions do. The more you try to manage other people's perceptions, the less energy you have to live authentically. And authenticity is magnetic. It attracts the right people and repels the wrong ones. This theory teaches that rejection is not failure. It is direction. When someone walks away, they are creating space. And space is where alignment enters. Think about how many times you've held on to situations that drained you simply because you were afraid of being alone, afraid of starting over, afraid of change. But what if letting go is not loss? What if it's relief? Mel Robbins emphasizes that peace is not found by controlling life. It's found by trusting yourself to handle it. Let them fail. Let them choose wrong. Let them miss out. Because not every lesson is yours to teach, and not every outcome is yours to fix. This becomes especially important in family relationships, where guilt often replaces boundaries. Many people feel obligated to tolerate disrespect because they're family. They feel responsible for other people's happiness. They feel trapped in old roles. Let them challenge that. There's no one left to blame, chase, or convince. And that's exactly why this part of the journey matters most. Mel Robbins explains that the let them theory doesn't just free you from others. It exposes where you've been holding yourself back. Because once you stop saying, "Why are they doing this to me?" the question quietly changes to, "What am I doing to myself?" This is where growth begins. Most people believe their biggest obstacles are external. A difficult boss, a toxic relationship, a lack of support, a system that feels unfair. And while those things are real, they are rarely the reason people stay stuck for years. The real reason is resistance. Resistance to discomfort. Resistance to uncertainty. Resistance to taking responsibility. Let them removes the distraction of other people's behavior and places your focus back where it belongs, on your own choices. In success, this is everything. People delay starting businesses, changing careers, creating content, or pursuing goals because they are waiting for approval, waiting for encouragement, waiting for validation, waiting for someone else to believe in them first. But confidence doesn't work that way. Confidence is not something you receive. It's something you build by acting without permission. And the let them theory gives you the courage to do exactly that. Let them doubt you. Let them question your decisions. Let them laugh. Because none of those reactions determine your future. Mel Robbins explains that fear of judgment is one of the most powerful forces controlling human behavior. It keeps people small. It keeps them quiet. It keeps them safe, but also unfulfilled. And here's the truth most people avoid. You will be judged no matter what you do. So you might as well live honestly. When you let others react however they want, you stop performing and start creating. You stop seeking consensus and start following conviction. And that's how momentum is born. This applies deeply to habits and self-discipline as well. Many people fail not because they lack motivation, but because they rely on emotional states they cannot control. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel confident. They wait to feel inspired. But feelings are unreliable. Let them teaches you to detach from emotional conditions. Let motivation come or not. Let fear show up. Let doubt exist. You act anyway. This is powerful because it aligns with how the brain actually changes. Neuroscience shows that behavior creates belief, not the other way around. Action rewires identity. When you stop negotiating with discomfort, discipline becomes easier. Let them feel uncomfortable. Let yourself feel awkward. Let the process be messy. Progress doesn't require permission from your emotions. Mel Robbins also applies the let them theory to failure, something people fear almost as much as rejection. People avoid trying because they're afraid of getting it wrong, of being embarrassed, of proving their doubts right. But failure is unavoidable if you are growing. So instead of trying to prevent it, let it happen. Let yourself fail. Let yourself learn. Let yourself be a beginner. Failure is not evidence of incompetence. It's evidence of courage. And when you stop making failure mean something about your worth, you become unstoppable. This theory also transforms how people relate to money and success. Many people carry subconscious beliefs shaped by their environment. They fear outgrowing others. They fear being judged for wanting more. They fear being seen as selfish or arrogant. So they shrink their dreams to fit someone else's comfort. Let them be uncomfortable with your ambition. Your growth is not a betrayal. If someone feels threatened by your progress, that is information, not instruction. Let them. Mel Robbins emphasizes that growth will cost you some relationships. Not because you changed in a negative way, but because alignment changes. And that loss can feel painful until you realize what you gained. You gained yourself. You gained clarity. You gained direction. You gained peace. And peace is expensive. It costs you people who thrive on chaos. One of the most profound shifts the Let Them theory creates is emotional regulation. Instead of reacting impulsively, you pause. Instead of absorbing energy, you observe it. Instead of escalating, you disengage. This doesn't make you weak. It makes you powerful. Because calm is power. When someone tries to provoke you, let them. When someone projects their issues onto you, let them. When someone refuses to understand you, let them. You do not need to attend every argument you're invited to. And once you stop reacting, you realize how much control you always had. You just didn't know it. This theory also helps people release guilt, one of the most paralyzing emotions. Guilt keeps people stuck in roles they've outgrown. It keeps them saying yes out of obligation instead of alignment. But guilt is often a sign that you are choosing yourself for the first time. And that's okay. Let them feel disappointed. Let them adjust. Let them process. Your responsibility is not to manage everyone else's emotions. Your responsibility is to live with integrity. Mel Robbins explains that people often confuse responsibility with self-sacrifice. But true responsibility is knowing where your control ends. You are responsible for your actions. You are not responsible for other people's reactions. Once you internalize that, life becomes simpler. Not easier, but clearer. Clarity creates confidence. Confidence creates momentum. Momentum creates change. As you continue applying the Let Them theory, you start to notice something profound. You become more selective, more intentional, more grounded. You stop chasing chaos and start choosing calm. And calm changes how you think, how you speak, how you decide. You stop rushing. You stop forcing. You stop settling. Because when you trust yourself, you don't need external reassurance. And this trust opens the door to something deeper, self-respect. Self-respect is built every time you don't abandon yourself to keep someone else. Every time you choose alignment over approval. Every time you let go instead of clinging. And self-respect changes how the world responds to you. People either rise to meet it or fall away. Both outcomes are wins. In the next part, Mel Robbins brings the Let Them theory into daily life in a practical, grounded way. Not as an abstract philosophy, but as a daily practice. Morning thoughts, real conversations, everyday decisions. Because freedom is not a one-time realization. It's a habit, and habits are built moment by moment. When you begin to live the Let Them theory day by day, it stops feeling like an idea and starts feeling like a quiet inner companion. It shows up in small moments, not dramatic ones. In the pause before you reply to a message. In the silence after someone disappoints you. In the breath you take when things don't go as planned. This is where the theory becomes real. Most emotional suffering doesn't come from big events. It comes from accumulation. Tiny moments of irritation. Small disappointments. Unspoken resentment. The constant mental replay of what someone said, what they meant, what you should have said back. Mel Robbins explains that overthinking is simply your brain trying to regain control. It replays conversations because it believes there is something to fix, something to solve, something to protect you from. But most of the time, there is nothing to fix. Let them ends the replay. When your mind starts spiraling, you say it gently. Let them, not as a dismissal, but as a release. You're telling your brain that this is not a threat, that you don't need to stay alert, that you're safe even if things are unresolved. And slowly, the nervous system calms. This is why the Let Them theory works so well for anxiety. Anxiety feeds on uncertainty and control. The more you try to control outcomes, the more anxious you become. Your body stays tense, waiting for danger. Let Them interrupts that loop. You stop scanning for approval. You stop anticipating rejection. You stop bracing for disappointment. You allow life to unfold without gripping it too tightly. Mel Robbins explains that peace is not the absence of problems. It's the absence of resistance to reality. When you stop fighting what already is, your energy returns to you. Think about mornings. Many people wake up already stressed. They're thinking about emails they haven't received, responses they didn't like, people who might be upset. They start the day reacting to imagined scenarios. But when you practice let them, your mornings become grounded. If someone is unhappy today, let them. If today doesn't go as planned, let it. If progress feels slow, let it. You focus on what you can do, not what you can't control. This shifts your entire emotional baseline. Mel Robbins emphasizes that emotional triggers lose their power when you stop attaching meaning to them. A short reply doesn't mean rejection. Silence doesn't always mean anger. Someone's mood doesn't always involve you. But when you assume everything is personal, you carry unnecessary weight. Let them removes that weight. You stop interpreting everything as a reflection of your worth. You stop turning neutral events into emotional stories. And in that quiet space, you start hearing your own voice again. This is especially powerful in digital life, where people are constantly exposed to opinions, comparisons, and judgments. Social media magnifies insecurity. It creates the illusion that everyone else is doing better, living better, feeling better. But comparison thrives on attention. So Mel Robbins offers a simple shift. Let them have their lives. Let them post. Let them shine. Your journey does not lose value because someone else is visible. When you stop measuring yourself against others, you start moving at your own pace. And that pace is where sustainability lives. Burnout often comes not from working too hard, but from working without alignment. From chasing goals that aren't truly yours. From proving instead of building. Let them teaches you to check in with yourself instead of the crowd. What do you want? What feels right? What matters to you? And once you know, you don't need consensus. This theory also changes how you handle conflict. Instead of escalating, you create space. Instead of defending, you listen. Instead of reacting, you respond. Not every misunderstanding needs resolution. Not every conflict needs closure. Not every relationship needs repair. Some things need acceptance. Let them be who they are. And let yourself decide what you will tolerate. That's where boundaries become natural instead of forced. Mel Robbins explains that boundaries don't require explanations. The more you justify them, the more you weaken them. Let them removes the need to convince. You don't need everyone to understand your boundary. You need to respect it. And when you do, others either adjust or fall away. Both outcomes are clarity. This daily practice also strengthens emotional resilience. When something doesn't go your way, you recover faster. You don't spiral as long. You don't collapse into self-doubt. You say, okay, this is happening. Let it. And then you ask a better question. What's next? That question keeps you moving forward. Life will always be unpredictable. People will always surprise you. Plans will always change. But your response determines your experience. Let them gives you choice. Choice to disengage. Choice to refocus. Choice to move on. And that choice is empowering. Over time, you begin to trust yourself more. You trust that you can handle disappointment, that you can survive rejection, that you don't need to control everything to be okay. That trust creates inner safety. And inner safety is the foundation of confidence. When you feel safe within yourself, you don't cling. You don't chase. You don't over-explain. You stand steady. This steadiness changes how others interact with you. You become less reactive, more grounded. You stop feeding drama. You stop participating in emotional chaos. And chaos needs participation to survive. When you withdraw your energy, chaos dissolves. Mel Robbins reminds us that growth is not loud. It's quiet. It's subtle. It's the accumulation of small choices made consistently. Each time you choose let them instead of emotional reaction, you strengthen a new pattern, a healthier one. And slowly, your life begins to feel lighter. Not because nothing goes wrong, but because nothing owns you. In the next part, we move into the deepest layer of the let them theory, identity, self-worth, and the quiet courage of letting yourself become who you truly are, even if others don't understand it. Because letting them is only half the story. The other half is letting yourself. At some point, after you've practiced letting others be who they are, you arrive at a quiet realization that changes everything. You realize that the person you've been most controlling, most critical, and most unforgiving toward has been yourself. This is where the let them theory turns inward. Mel Robbins explains that many people think they struggle because of other people, but the deeper struggle is internal. It's the pressure to be perfect, the pressure to get it right, the pressure to live up to expectations that were never consciously chosen. And just like with others, that pressure creates resistance. You resist your own growth. You resist your own healing. You resist your own truth. So Mel Robbins introduces the other side of the equation, one that is just as important as letting them. It is learning to let yourself. Let yourself change. Let yourself outgrow people. Let yourself rest. Let yourself want more. Most people are far harsher with themselves than they are with anyone else. They replay mistakes. They judge past decisions. They criticize their pace. They compare their chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. But growth doesn't respond to pressure. It responds to compassion. Let yourself removes the internal battle. Instead of saying, I should be further by now, you say, this is where I am. Instead of saying, I shouldn't feel this way, you say, this is how I feel. Instead of saying, I need to fix myself, you say, I'm learning. This doesn't make you complacent. It makes you honest. And honesty is the foundation of change. Mel Robbins explains that shame is one of the biggest blockers of transformation. When you shame yourself for struggling, your nervous system shuts down. You go into survival mode. And in survival mode, growth is impossible. Let yourself be human. Let yourself be imperfect. Let yourself heal at your own pace. This is how emotional safety is built, not by pushing harder, but by softening resistance. The let them theory helps you separate your identity from your experiences. You stop defining yourself by outcomes. You stop believing that mistakes are character flaws. You stop making temporary situations mean permanent things about who you are. You are not your failures. You are not your delays. You are not your doubts. You are the one moving through them. This shift changes how you approach goals. Instead of forcing motivation, you create alignment. Instead of punishing yourself for inconsistency, you return gently to intention. Let yourself try again. Mel Robbins emphasizes that consistency is not about perfection, it's about recovery. How quickly you return after you fall off track. How kindly you speak to yourself when you do. Let yourself restart without drama. When people finally allow themselves this grace, something surprising happens. They become more disciplined, not less. This balance is where peace lives. As the let them theory becomes part of your identity, your life starts to feel simpler. Not because it lacks complexity, but because you stop adding unnecessary struggle. You stop forcing alignment. You stop explaining your worth. You stop chasing clarity from people who can't give it. You trust yourself to navigate whatever comes. And that trust is unshakable. In the next part, Mel Robbins brings everything together. How letting them and letting yourself creates a life of calm strength, clear boundaries, meaningful success, and emotional freedom. Because the ultimate goal is not control. It is peace. When the let them theory finally settles into your life, it no longer feels like something you practice. It feels like something you live. You don't have to remind yourself every time. The response becomes instinctive. Calm replaces chaos. Clarity replaces confusion. And the world begins to feel less heavy. Mel Robbins explains that this is the moment when people realize they were never meant to carry everything. They were never meant to manage everyone's emotions, expectations, or reactions. They were meant to live. And living requires space. Letting them creates that space. This is where everything starts to come together. Relationships feel cleaner. Decisions feel clearer. Your energy feels protected. You stop reacting to every ripple and start moving with intention. You begin to notice how much of your life was shaped by fear. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of being rejected, fear of being alone. And you realize that fear was never protecting you. It was limiting you. Let them dissolve that fear. Because when you stop trying to control outcomes, you stop fearing them. You trust yourself to handle whatever happens next. This is the core transformation. Mel Robbins talks about emotional freedom as the ability to experience life without being hijacked by it. You still feel sadness, disappointment, frustration, because they are no longer rebelling against self-judgment. They are working with themselves instead of against themselves. This also changes how you relate to your past. Many people are trapped by regret. They replay decisions they wish they had made differently. They blame themselves for what they didn't know at the time. But regret assumes you had the awareness you have now. You didn't. Let yourself forgive who you were. You did the best you could with the tools you had. And now you have new tools. That's not failure. That's growth. Mel Robbins explains that identity is not fixed. It's fluid. You are allowed to redefine yourself. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to walk away from versions of yourself that no longer fit. Let yourself evolve. If others struggle to accept the new you, let them. Growth often feels lonely at first because familiarity resists change. But the discomfort of becoming is temporary. The discomfort of staying stuck is permanent. This theory also helps people release the fear of disappointing others. Many people stay in careers, relationships, and roles that drain them because they're afraid of letting people down. But living a life that isn't yours is the greatest disappointment of all. Let yourself choose differently. You are not responsible for fulfilling expectations that cost you your peace. Mel Robbins reminds us that self-trust is built through action. Each time you honor your needs, each time you set a boundary, each time you walk away from what doesn't align, you send yourself a powerful message. I can trust me. And when you trust yourself, you don't need constant reassurance. You don't need external validation. You don't need permission. You move with quiet confidence. This is what emotional independence looks like. Not isolation, not detachment, but grounded self-connection. You are connected to others without being controlled by them. You are connected to yourself without being rigid. But they no longer define you. They move through you instead of trapping you. Let them allow emotions to pass. When someone disappoints you, you feel it, and you let it go. When something doesn't work out, you grieve, and you move forward. When plans fall apart, you adjust without collapsing. Resilience is not toughness. It's flexibility. And flexibility is born from acceptance. This philosophy also changes how you approach purpose and meaning. Many people believe they must have everything figured out before taking the next step. They wait for certainty. They wait for confidence. They wait for clarity. But clarity comes from movement. Let them help you move without guarantees. Let the path reveal itself. Let the process teach you. Let the outcome be unknown. Because life is not meant to be controlled. It's meant to be experienced. Mel Robbins reminds us that fulfillment doesn't come from perfect circumstances. It comes from alignment. From living in a way that honors your values instead of chasing approval. When you let others be who they are, and you let yourself be who you are becoming, something powerful happens. You stop living reactively. You stop living defensively. You start living deliberately. Your decisions are no longer driven by fear. They're driven by truth. And truth is steady. This is where peace becomes your baseline instead of a rare moment. You still have challenges. You still face uncertainty. But your inner world is no longer in constant turmoil. You trust your ability to respond. And that trust is everything. Mel Robbins emphasizes that the Let Them theory is not about withdrawing from life. It's about engaging with it in a healthier way. You show up fully, but you don't lose yourself. You love deeply, but you don't cling. You care, but you don't control. You try, but you don't force. This balance is what most people are searching for, without knowing it. As the book draws toward its core message, the truth becomes undeniable. Most suffering is optional, not because pain isn't real, but because resistance multiplies it. When you release resistance, you reclaim power. Let them be late. Let them change. Let them disagree. And let yourself choose how you respond. That choice is freedom. Mel Robbins invites you to imagine a life where you no longer carry resentment, where you no longer replay conversations, where you no longer feel responsible for everyone else's happiness. Imagine waking up lighter. Imagine moving through your day grounded. Imagine trusting yourself completely. That life is not reserved for a few. It's available to anyone willing to let go. This is the quiet revolution of the Let Them theory. It doesn't demand that the world change. It changes how you show up in the world. And that changes everything. As we come toward the final moments of this journey, one message remains clear and steady. You don't need to control life to live well. You need to trust yourself enough to let it unfold. Let them be who they are. Let yourself be who you are becoming. And choose peace again and again. As you sit with everything you've heard so far, something inside you may already feel different. Not louder, not dramatic, just quieter, clearer, lighter. And that's how real change usually begins, not with fireworks, but with a deep exhale you didn't realize you were holding. Mel Robbins closes this journey with a reminder that feels almost too simple, yet profoundly life-altering. You don't need to fix everything to be okay. Most people live as if peace is something they'll earn one day, after they've proven themselves, after others understand them, after life finally settles down. But peace doesn't come later. Peace comes the moment you stop fighting what you cannot control. Let them. Let people be messy. Let situations be imperfect. Let life be uncertain. And instead of tightening your grip, soften it. This is not giving up. This is growing up. Because maturity is realizing that control is an illusion, but choice is real. You may not choose what happens, but you always choose how much of yourself you give away to it. And every time you choose calm over chaos, acceptance over resistance, alignment over approval, you are choosing yourself. That choice compounds. It shapes your relationships. It shapes your confidence. It shapes your future. Imagine looking back on your life one day and realizing you spent it fully present, not consumed by resentment, not trapped in overthinking, not exhausted from managing everyone else's emotions. Imagine a life where you trust yourself enough to let go. That is the life the Let Them theory invites you into. It doesn't promise ease. It promises freedom. Freedom from emotional noise. Freedom from constant explanation. Freedom from the belief that your worth is something others get to decide. Mel Robbins reminds us that the most powerful people are not the loudest, the most aggressive, or the most controlling. They are the calmest. They know who they are. They know what they value. And they are not shaken by what is outside their control. They let life move. And they move with it. As this story comes to an end, take a moment to reflect. Where have you been gripping too tightly? Where have you been chasing clarity from people who cannot give it? Where have you been abandoning yourself just to keep the peace? And ask yourself one gentle question. What would change if you simply let them? Let them think what they think. Let them choose what they choose. Let them react how they react. And then, turn inward. Let yourself rest. Let yourself grow. Let yourself begin again. You don't need permission to live honestly. You don't need approval to choose peace. You already have everything you need. If this message resonated with you, if even one idea felt like it loosened something inside your chest, then let this be the moment you carry it forward. Start small. Practice gently. Return to it often. And watch how your life slowly, quietly transforms. If you enjoyed this deep dive and want more audiobook-style summaries that change how you think, feel, and live, support the universe of book by liking this video. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future journeys like this one. And share your thoughts in the comments. What part of the Let Them theory spoke to you the most? Your reflection might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Thank you for spending this time here. Thank you for choosing growth. And remember, let them, and let yourself live.